And guys, if you followed Reba's progress through TikTok and all of those things, you know that Reba's been my go-to ranch horse for a number of years. And lately, I have discovered that there's some stuff that we still need to work on with Reba. I'm always looking for things to continuously work on with my horses to improve them. And one thing I came across in one of our last sessions that I rode her was that, and this was something that we covered when I started her under saddle and I did all the groundwork and everything, but we have some issues with a rope going around her hind end. And I have assumed, because I've roped off of her at tons of brandings, she's been my go-to horse. She's, gotten me out of a lot of potential wrecks because she's had a good mind. But the last time I rode her and was working with her, I got off. And I can't remember exactly what I did, but the rope went around her butt. I was working on some groundwork stuff. That's what I was doing because she got pretty hot working on the flag. And so I put the rope around her butt and she kind of lost her mind about it, which caught me off guard. And so what was supposed to be our cool down session ended up kind of turning into a little bit of a fight because it was my fault that it ended up turning into a fight 100% because I had greater expectations of her. But then remembering that the last branding that Reba and I had roped at in Eastern Oregon before moving up here to North Idaho, I remembered that there was somebody there that was roping that probably shouldn't have been roping and almost got us in a number of wrecks, rim firing people, everybody in the pen when they were roping. And he rim fired Reba a number of times. And so now she has a little bit of uneasiness with a rope around her butt because of it. And so since we have encountered that problem and I've come to that realization, I waited until I could get a surcingle here to work with her on this particular problem. I tried to kind of ground drive her, but it was so much of a fight and it was so much of just a lot of different things with her that I didn't feel comfortable leaving my saddle on her, and ground driving a horse with long reins without a surcingle and no saddle is pretty difficult. So I waited until I could get a surcingle to kind of revamp and go through this. So we're going to kind of work through Reba's uneasiness and trauma with having a rope around her butt because somebody had soured her to that particular situation. And so I'm not going to go immediately to ground driving her now that I have the surcingle. We're going to go through and kind of break this down. And I might get to ground driving her today. But if it doesn't happen, I feel like she's just not ready for that quite yet with the ropes going around her butt and because she's never really been ground driven before. So that's something that she's going to learn as well. But I want to make sure I'm always preaching, break down everything into easy, understandable steps for your horses. And so instead of just throwing the snaffle bit on her and going immediately to ground driving and fighting and battling her on figuring it out at the same time that she's having this uneasiness with ropes around her butt and stuff, we're just going to kind of build up to it and make sure that she's confident. So when we go into ground driving, it's not a big old fight. It's more of a learning process instead of a fight. And she goes into it confidently, willing to do something instead of very uneasy and spooky and reactive. So the exercise that I was doing with her that I really found out that, she was having some uneasiness with a rope around her butt is one of the things I always do with my colts when I start them under saddle is first I start out with making sure that if I were to do this, put the rope to the offside and ask him to turn, and I don't have the saddle on, so she's kind of confused with it right now, but that they're going to do that horse understands to give to the pressure instead of just follow me, because there's a lot of colts out there that they learn to follow you, but they don't know how to give to pressure, and that exercise right there is a really good indicator showing whether your colt actually knows how to give to pressure or they're just following you. And that's a big part of halter breaking, Is your horse actually halter broke and know how to give to that pressure? Oh, I know. She's already getting tense about it from the last time we worked on it. But that's a good indicator showing that, does your horse actually know how to give to pressure, or are they just following you around? Because when you halter break a horse, a lot of people think their horse is halter broken, when in reality that horse is just broke to follow you around. And halter breaking a horse is teaching a horse how to give to pressure. And that's why you get horses that are so uneasy. She's trying to anticipate right here. So uneasy and set back, or horses that don't load in a trailer and stuff like that, is because these horses were never taught how to give to pressure. So this was something that I was working with her, and you could see she's already kind of snorting and getting a little uneasy about it. And I just kind of started out like I always do, and she was doing great. But then one of the things that I end up doing with my colts is, see here, she's kind of getting uneasy about this. She's just kind of avoidant. So she's getting lack of confidence here. So we're taking it slow. I'm going to break this down for her. But what I end up doing with this is eventually, right here, I want to kind of keep her straight because she's kind of anticipating and moving away. And she's just not confident in me, so I'm building her confidence right now in me. Showing her that it's okay. And she's trying to anticipate and move away from that pressure because she doesn't want me to get it around her butt, because she's really uneasy about it being around her butt. You can see her getting tight and tense here. I'm just moving slow about it. I'm not going to expect her to, and I'm not even going to pull it around her butt. I'm just going to stand here and let her be okay with this, and then I'll pull it back up and kind of do this. There we go. See? No reason to be tight and tense. So as we're working through this uneasiness, even with a broke horse, she's done this before. She's capable of doing this. But because she has had a bad experience from somebody who shouldn't have ever been roping in the branding pen, we're going through some issues here. And we're just working through it. And you notice here that I'm not really like getting after her for moving her feet around. She's a broke horse. She knows better than to do something like that, to be avoidant. But I'm really working with her on making sure that she understands that she can move her feet. I'm not making her feel trapped by making her stand still. That I'm really just trying to make her feel easy about this. And I got a rope out here eventually. What I'll do is, when we get to the point where we do get this lead rope around her butt and she feels all right with it, what I will do is I'll put that rope tied to the surcingle, put it around her butt so it's kind of down on her, almost on her hocks, and then lunge her with it so she gets used to that feeling of that rope being around her hind end. And we might not even get that far today. We're just working on making sure she feels confident and comfortable with me. She doesn't feel uneasy about ropes around her butt because anything necessarily that I did, but because somebody who shouldn't have been in the branding pen anyways did her wrong. So a lot of people, they wouldn't understand, like, if Reba were to go down the road to somebody else, she's very tight, she's a tense horse, she's always just she's kind of looky and watchy. She'll do anything when she has confidence in you. This horse will do anything you ask her to. No issue at all. But because she's was a Mustang on range for 7 years of her life before ever getting into human contact, she kind of has issues trusting people just because that's her nature, not necessarily because she's been fouled up by people but just because she spent a majority of her life with that prey instinct of, hey, you know, be watchy, be fearful kind of thing. Good girl. And so it's okay for her to have that watchy kind of fearful, just, you know, you got to prove. Reba, she's just not a horse that you can necessarily put anybody on and say, all right, you could go down the trail and do whatever you want off of her. You got to prove to Reba that there's a reason that she can trust you. And it's not by any means of her training or anything like that. It's just solely by the means of the fact that she spent 7 years on range as a prey animal. And that's her nature, is that people have to prove to be trustworthy of her before she trusts you. And see, she's getting better now. And so I foresee Reba as a horse. There we go. I see Reba as a horse. If Reba were to ever go down the road, something were to happen to me, and she had to be sold, she would be a horse that easily someone would label as traumatized because of just her nature, her personality. Someone would do something like this and they could easily say, oh, Sarah messed up this horse and traumatized her to ropes because she was a ranch horse, and make some big old huge sob story out of this horse. Good girl. There we go. We went a little bit farther. You see I'm off the pad now, kind of on her butt. There. Now we're just gonna ask her to spin around. You see, she's not snorting and she's not all huffy puffy about this anymore because I'm taking it slow and building her confidence. But Reba, like I said, she's a horse that I could easily foresee somebody going, oh, her previous owner roped her and traumatized her, and now she's weary of ropes around her butt because of it. When in reality, it was one person in the branding pen that shouldn't have ever been there that did this. She spent 4 years roping prior to this with no issues with a rope being around her butt at all. And then one trip to the branding pen and one guy making a mistake over and over again, she got soured to it. That doesn't mean that she's traumatized. It just means that she lost her confidence in something she was really good at. How many of you guys can relate to the fact that you were riding horses for a long time and then you get bucked off and now you're scared to get on a horse? Or every time you get on a horse, you're a little uneasy now because you got bucked off and hurt. It's the same thing. It's not necessarily it was traumatizing for you. You still want to ride horses and you still want to enjoy it. It's just the fact that your confidence was shaken. You're not as confident as you were before. And it's something that you can get over. To me, trauma is something that it's something that is always going to be in the back of your mind for the rest of your life. This right here, if we work Reba through this, which we are, you can see here she's already getting better. It's not a trauma. She wasn't traumatized. She just had her confidence shaken down and kind of her legs kind of taken out from under her with her confidence when it comes to ropes around her butt. There we go. You can see she's starting to get a little uneasy again about it because I'm venturing past the pad onto her butt, but she's doing pretty good about it. Good girl. And we're just going to work slowly through these things, just like that. You can see she's like, oh, like right there, she spun around kind of fast, and she's like, oh, it was almost around my butt. Good girl. But it's not anything that's bad. It's not trauma. You know, she's not losing her mind about it. She's still thinking about it. She's just uneasy. And so, hey, come here. Stop that. So what I'm going to do here, see, she's kind of trying to anticipate. So right here, I'm just kind of putting that rope on her butt. And I'm not putting it around her butt. I'm just putting it on her butt and letting her think about it. Once she stops, I'm just going to go, all right, there you go, you're good. Working through these things with your horses and breaking it down into easy, understandable steps is what's going to build your horse's confidence, because if you don't break it down, what's going to happen is what happened last time when I discovered this issue, and I said, oh, we should be able to get over this problem in a couple of minutes just by trying to ground drive her. Then we end up putting ourselves in a spot where she's sweaty, I'm sweaty, we got in a fight. I had too much expectations of her. I expected her to just kind of get over it because she had so much experience with this. And all that did was make it so her confidence is shaken even more. I didn't build her confidence in what I did because I had too many expectations of her. All I did was make it worse. And so something that if I would have waited until I got the proper equipment and dealt with it, you could see here she's just kind of looking at that rope and she's real uneasy about this being on her butt. And I'm just kind of letting her kind of dance around and figure it out without freaking her out, you know. I'm building her confidence. I'm putting her just outside of that comfort zone of uneasiness and putting her back in it. Even though she has experience with ropes around her butt, she should be fine with this. But because somebody took her confidence out, and you can see here she's really not liking that rope right there. And something that a lot of people would do right now is they would take that butt rope and tie it onto this surcingle and then turn her loose and let her figure it out herself. And she would tear around the pen here, bucking and kicking at that butt rope, freaking out. And then finally she'd get to the point where she's mentally shut down and she'd accept it. And then guess what? Next time you put a butt rope around her, she didn't learn anything, because when they mentally shut down, they don't actually learn anything. They just, it's kind of like in their mind, the way what happens when a horse mentally shuts down is, we'll do this there, is they have a fear going through their mind. When they're having an explosive reaction, they legit think that they are going to get harmed and hurt or killed. Good girl. And when they mentally shut down, that's them going, just kill me. Basically, I'm done. They give up. And so when you get into that give up state, they don't learn anything. They don't retain anything. And so we want to prevent a horse from getting mentally shut down. And so by doing stuff like this, you could see she's accepting it. That right there is building her confidence, and it's keeping her mind working, and it's keeping her mind going.